Arab-India Economic Forum, which was held on November 16th and 17th earlier this year in Dubai, witnessed an elite gathering of senior dignitaries, government officials and business leaders from across the Arab region and India. The extensive economic opportunities between Arab nations and India were the focus of the forum. The event kicked off with a keynote speech by Mr. Arun Jaitley, Finance Minister of India, who elaborated on the business and investment opportunities in India and also spoke in depth on Make in India and Digital India initiatives.
Public investment in India has grown in the last year by over 30%. Foreign direct investment has grown by over 40%. Our private investment is still slow. It's improving, but not in comparison to the improvement which has taken place as far as public investment and private investment and foreign direct investment are concerned. The challenge for us, therefore, in India is actually to bring about the balance of structural changes in the economy which were required. These structural changes itself will enable investment to grow, economic activity to expand, create more jobs, create more revenues, and important signals of that have already started coming. This partnership between the UAE and India has been a great success in the past, and I am quite certain, having brought prosperity to a large number of people, it's the home of many people of Indian origin, it has brought prosperity to a large number of them, who in turn also send monies back home and bring prosperities to their region. And therefore, they come here, they work for this particular region, they've contributed to the great success of this region. And I'm quite certain that this mutually beneficial partnership will now have to be taken to a new level, that it's a relationship which is going to further flourish.
After the opening keynote, the event witnessed a panel discussion on banking and finance. The tone of the discussion was set by Mr. Ashish Chauhan, CEO and MD of Bombay Stock Exchange, who highlighted the scenario of doing business in India and elaborated on why making investments in India is beneficial for investors.
In next 20 years, world will create jobs. 70% of the jobs will be created in such a way that we have not thought about them today. Most of the jobs will be created in future have not been even thought about today. But today, a lot of jobs in India are getting created, and those jobs are going to create those wealth. Robotics, nanotechnology, 3D printing. 3D printing is going to change the way we look at manufacturing. Nanotechnology is going to change the way we look at material overall. Robotics is going to again change life completely, thoroughly. World will create wealth that has not been created in last 10,000 years. World will create in next 20 years wealth that has not been created in last 10,000 years, and India is going to be party to that. So all of you, if you come to India, invest. I mean, this is what I call a private pitch. What minister's speech was the government speech. Mine is private pitch, because with or without government, India is going to progress. And it has progressed in the past with all what we call mismanagement. India has progressed 7.5%, not bad. Next 20, 30 years is going to be much larger, much rapid, and all of you are invited to come to India. But India is a hugely happening market. 1.3 billion people, half of them below age 25. That energy is what is going to take India forward. So my invitation to all of you to come to India, invest in the companies listed in BSE, even otherwise also. Thank you very much.
Post this panel discussion was kicked off by Mini Menon, Executive Editor, Bloomberg TV, India.
How are you seeing the kind of tectonic shift? Because India is in a sweet spot. I think the Middle East and India have a strong connect, and Dubai and India have a very, very big trade connect as well. So in the context of that, how are you seeing at DIFC the opportunity that India offers?
I think Dubai and UAE and India share a very historic relationship. But what has happened in UAE in the last 10-20 years is that excellent infrastructures have been created, legal, regulatory, physical, technology. And these infrastructures are helping international companies, Indian companies, access the market. And the market, as we see it, is not just Middle East or GCC, but goes beyond. So what Dubai really helps in doing is connect opportunities that international investors would like to tap into India, and also for Indian financial institutions to expand their network beyond just India.
Ashish, how do you see the South-South corridor really working out? And in terms of sheer capital flows and operations of companies that are listed in the BSE, how important is the region? Because I know over the last 3 to 4 years, for instance, while the global economy was slowing down, a lot of Indian economies had made very strong bets in the region because the Middle East has been building up in terms of infrastructure, and there's been a huge round of work which has happened around it. What's your insight into this?
For me, I don't see South-South as a only way, because in some sense UAE is in a right place at the right time. At the same time, there is huge amount of funds internationally, almost 40 to 50 trillion dollars, moving around or waiting to be invested in places where there is growth. Because if you look at it, Japan, there is no growth. China has suddenly stopped. US, Europe, there is no growth. So effectively, the two regions which are looking interesting are India and Africa. And in some sense, that 40, 50 trillion dollars of wealth has to find ways to sort of get returns on that investment. Otherwise, you can put into Europe and most probably you will start getting negative returns. They will keep money, they will start charging you for keeping money with them. Even US looks to be the same case, So effectively, that money has to move around. And in some sense, India has its own capital control regime, so it doesn't allow money to move fast. And in some sense, Dubai is almost there, Like today, he was telling me that Mumbai, Dubai is much closer than Mumbai, Calcutta. And in some sense, yes, but effectively, Dubai provides a very interesting framework. On the eastern side, even Singapore provides that. But effectively, these two places have a very large sort of Indian diaspora. They know how Indian markets work and how the investors can actually use that. So for me, both places are in sweet spot. And today, Dubai has additional advantage of being closer in terms of culture and other things.
So let's come down to the issue of remittances. And I think sitting out of Dubai, that's the biggest thing that you talk about when you talk about financial connections with India, right? You move a lot of the money into India. You've got 400 retail outlets in India. You're an active NBFC vying for a banking license now in India. How do you leverage on this great flow of money that is coming through Dubai into India? Because right now, a large part of that remittance is at a very base level of money being transferred to families.
If I give you a brief account of the total amount of remittance that is flowing into India across the globe is 70 billion last year. Our estimate shows that almost 50% of that flow is from the GCC. That's the importance that we have for the GCC market. Now, out of this, almost 85% of this flow is from the low-paid workers. So, naturally, these are all hitting the bank accounts back in India, but the banks act as a post office because the money hits in and it goes out from the system. We have been deliberating on this issue, whether this category of the low-paid workers, do we have some instrument where they could have a systematic investment plan, a small monthly savings in terms of, so how to induce the people to go into some sort of saving, because what happens is sudden loss of job, the man is out of income, and then that affects the family. Sure. I think the government is actively looking at these areas because a couple of schemes got introduced lately. One is on the insurance side, one is on the savings side. And definitely, as far as the flow that we see from the Middle East to Indian corridor is concerned, we see that the profile of the community is also slowly changing. Not because there are no opportunities here, but there are better opportunities back in India for the low-paid workers. Now, in terms of providing the channel of remittances into India, of course, UAE Exchange is present in all the GCC countries except Saudi Arabia for various reasons. We see that the technology has really helped this industry more than anybody, any other industry for that matter. Because from a situation where not long ago nobody knew how long it will take to put the money across, to a situation where instantaneously the amount gets credited to the customer's account 24/7.
How are you gearing up for something like that? Because it's only a matter of time when technology is going to disrupt a lot of the models, traditional models of remittances, right? I mean, how are you approaching it?
In terms of remittance, the transfers, I mean, Bitcoin, other agencies, there's a lot of technology companies that has come inside, but nobody has actually had an actual grasp on the whole sector as such. That's mainly because it all depends on the back-end infrastructure that is there.
Sure.
The remittance companies that are based on this side has that infrastructure already live, with almost 60, 70 odd international banks on our tie-up, where direct seamless service has been integrated.
Sure.
For us to move to the technological advanced platform would be a natural step, and that I feel is a great
already
it's already on the pipeline. Yes, it's already on the pipeline, and I think so most of the companies in near future, there is some regulatory issues that has to be sorted out, because regulation plays a very important aspect and it's different from geographies to geographies. So we're working with the regulatory authorities here, and also on having these connections based with different banking sector down here. I think once these two issues are sorted out, I think so it's a matter of time that this platform will be launched in this side.
I know that the BSE has worked very closely in creating a platform to trade in the BSE futures, for instance, out of Dubai. What has the success been in that, and what are the learnings from it?
The BSE has actually allowed DGCX to trade in Sensex futures, that is our index.
Sure.
And that's more what I call a speculative product. But when it comes to investment products, because most people want to invest for long term, and that's where we are trying to work out on the what I call NRI mutual fund framework, where we have a mutual fund distribution system. You can select on any mutual fund, and NRI sitting here should be able to sort of go through any of the exchanges sitting here and invest in that fund. And the way we work in India is that we also have a liquid fund framework. That is, if you want even 1 day's returns, if you have money available only for one night, you can actually invest in liquid funds of your choice, and we give you the returns next day before 9 a.m.
Two very interesting themes out of this, Sudhir, and I'm going to get your views on it. First is that there are a multiplicity of products out there which NRIs can access, but the tendency is it the lack of information, the lack of comfort? Why is it not being as prolific as it can be? Because even today, and I think as a financial journalist, I can tell you that the biggest challenge in India is, for instance, and Ashish, you would second that, is that the proportion of Indians, investing in the stock markets or mutual funds is such a small iota. I remember doing mutual fund summits, and the biggest, competition to a mutual fund is actually a fixed deposit, because India prefers to save through a FD or gold in many cases. So, what is the problem out there? What is the last mile kind of issue?
No, I think going forward, you will see that is changing, because traditionally we come from a background where dealing in stock is not our cup of tea, sitting away from the market, and whether we are not monitoring these movements very closely. So I think that is slowly changing because of the technology, emergence of technology. And in terms of why people are so comfortable keeping the money in the banks, it's they have that fallback, guarantee that, okay, tomorrow when I need the money, I can just take it out so easily. And whether investing in a stock market, whether it is the opportune time to come out, whether distress sale or whatever may be. But I think largely it is because the confidence in the whole system it was not there in the past, which is gaining in the times. And going forward, the next gen of NRIs will definitely be more active in the stock market and high yielding investment opportunities. And I'm sure among all the investment opportunities that anybody could think of, we have a lot of areas in India where the return on investment will be definitely very attractive in India compared to most of the other markets. We see renewed interest among the NRI communities investing into real estate.
Sure.
Of course, the bonds and securities, which is high yielding, and then the bank deposits and the stock market. Maybe in that order it is coming now.
What is also happening, Adil, is that in the Indian banking space, there's a huge sea change. I mean, we've just had an FDI policy which allows, banks, foreign investment to be higher. There are new banking licenses, new formats. The other question is that if you are looking at an entry into India, would you also look at investing, acquisitions? Is that turning out to be an interesting proposition rather than going and reinventing the wheel from scratch? Because I know, a lot of the players are looking very actively at consolidating.
Yeah. Our first entry channel to India was, yes, supposed to go and acquire banks. But due to the regulatory streams on individual investment into banks now capped at around 4.99%, we feel it's a very small percentage to go and acquire banks.
Sure.
Hence the idea of trying to get a banking license in play. From the perspective that our group looks at it is basically we would like to get into the per se of payment banks. Rather than a full-fledged banking, because we feel that the public sector and the private sector there is quite geared up. And with all these new changes coming inside, they are going to increase in size and strength only. So I think so for us to play would be on the technological drive. So we would be aiming, we were part of the first set of licenses, the application put forward. We were not successful, but as and when the regulations open up, we will be trying for another set of rounds for the payment bank license as such.
Okay. Chirag, there are two strains to our conversation, right? One is at the upper end, which is really at the big money, big investor, big capital flows end, and one is at the really bottom of the pyramid kind of thing. Now, my question to you is that to make it a more robust, deeper engagement, is there a sense that there has to be more teeth in the game from both ends, far more capital outlays, far more presence? I mean, over the last 5 years, I think we've seen a large number of Indian companies operate out of here. We've seen some tentative moves from Dubai-based companies into India, and both these companies are classic examples of it. How do you see that panning out?
If you look at the broader context for India, I think there is a substantial risk premium associated with India, and that's to do with uncertainty, and that's really unnecessary. So actually, the cost of funding for Indian companies is higher than most other emerging market players, and one of the reasons for that is that it's not very easy to put in money into India, and it's very difficult to get money out of India, and that's really a perception that's played an important part in that role. I think by having good relations and gateways to invest into India, whether be it Dubai or Singapore or Mauritius, in certain environments, will help India access finance in a much suitable manner. On the larger, even the remittances issues and so on and so forth, I think there can be broader sets of products created if there were also better certainty around exchange rates and managing Indian currency both ways. As in, I think that's the issue that once you actually put the money into India, you can't bring it back in your foreign currency, limits the ability of companies to create products and structures, especially to manage risks as well. So if there were more products created which provide a unique solution to people, especially NRIs who would like their money to be fungible in multi-currencies, that would really help. And I think so the Indian government and the Indian financial industry, along with the international financial community, needs to work on creating products and structures that enable a two-way traffic of flow of investments, both at small ticket sizes but also on the larger ticket sizes.
Ashish, to conclude, I think somewhere, I think the pieces are coming together. It's like a jigsaw. And if you were to look at crystal ball gaze over the next 5 years, if this is where, on one hand you have Africa, which is rapidly building up. On the other you have India, which has got its own rhythms, but there's a robust entrepreneurial drive which is driving the economy forward. How do you see this region, and how important is it going to be in the context of as an emerging center?
I think the fundamental difference between Africa and India is the technology.
Sure.
I mean, India is the technology provider.
What I'm trying to say is, how important is Dubai going to be for India, and that's why, how important is that connectivity?
Yeah, that's why for me, India is going to be much more attractive in terms of the returns you get in a shorter time. And it's a society which is already imbued with some of the basic of technology. You know, in last 10 years, from 4 mobile phones per 100 people, now we have probably 110 instead of even 100, right? So effectively, we are now kind of a fertile ground already seeded. Now, little rain and you will start getting a lot of crop, you know. And so for me, UAE will find it easy to invest in India for returns. If you want to go for long term, probably with hopes of what I call non-linear payoff, India has a non-linear payoff movement just now. With all the entrepreneurs, all that activity going on, you have huge amount of sort of upside that is available for India as a consumption country, and India is a sort of a producing country for the rest of the world in terms of technology and other things. And Africa is probably a few steps behind. So if you want to look at say 5-7 years, India looks to be the
My question on Africa was more in the context of Indian companies eyeing Africa. So I mean, for them, is this going to be a stepping stone to get there? Because I think that's the other big theme, right? I mean, if you look at Indian consumer finance companies or FMCG companies, construction companies, all of them have a very big presence in Middle East and in Africa.
In Africa, again, you look at it from resources angle or from the consumption angle.
Sure.
Consumption angle is where India scores. Resources angle is where China scores. And India will never score the way China scores, and China will never score the way India scores. So effectively, both will be in kind of different markets, segments moving together. And more or less, Dubai will be the hub for outward remittances into, outward investment into Africa and MENA region for Indian industrialists.
Adip, how are you seeing the opportunity, and what are you betting on if you were to look at the next 5 years?
In the context of
the financial and banking system evolution and transformation driven by technology from an Indian context?
I think there's a huge amount of space in that, and this is widely seen also in today's time. So I think so in India also, I think so there's going to be a huge differentiation in the way that people are going to shop, they're going to bank, they're going to make their payments. So I think so we're going to the age of digitalization very soon in India. I think so that's a huge perspective for companies such as us to invest in India at this point.
Sudeep?
Yeah, the very fact that, the Jan Dhan Yojana is the first step towards that, I think cash to cashless society. When you have almost all the entire population having a bank account, that's the starting point. Then you adopt technology on either side. You have delivery side and you have the sourcing side. Now today, as far as the process is concerned, we are putting the money across same minute. It's only the delivery and the sourcing that need to be lined up. The critical aspect of that is the bank account back in our country, which is happening now. I think it's definitely a first step towards cash to cashless society.
Chirag, I'm going to let you have the last word on this. How do you turn this opportunity, which I think everybody has only iterated, into real action? And what are the 2-3 things that need to be done?
I think, bottom up is the best way, really. Financial institutions, engineering change, and then pushing the regulators to enable that is probably the best approach, because if we're going to wait for the government to do something, you could be waiting for a long time. And I think India is fantastic. I think Ashish outlined it very well. Next 5 to 7 years, one of the best investment opportunities. But as you look at the next horizon, it's Africa, and that the Indian skill set can be used extensively to develop the opportunities that are represented in Africa. And UAE, Dubai, and the Middle East, which is a cash surplus region, is looking for investment opportunities in both of those markets. And how can more of that be tapped into? And that's really the role we are playing as DIFC, to enable a south-to-south corridor and an investment in these very high-growth markets. So to give everybody a level playing field, certainty of a legal regulatory environment, and the fantastic physical connectivity of Dubai is where the African continent and the Indian subcontinent needs to say, yeah, this is a great infrastructure, why not use it for our own benefit?
Right. But on that note, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.